President Trump held a news conference this afternoon, and he spoke about the rescue of the second airman Sunday following Iran shooting down an F-15 fighter jet on Friday. The president spoke about his decision to make sure they were both found and safely returned on American soil.
I ordered the U.S. Armed Forces to do whatever was necessary to bring our brave warriors back home. A risky decision, because we could have ended up with 100 dead as opposed to 1 or 2. It's a hard decision to make. But in the United States military, we leave no American behind. We don't do it.
The jet's pilot was rescued the same day the F-15 crashed, but the second American airman wasn't rescued until yesterday morning. Officials say U.S. forces led an urgent and high-risk rescue effort to find the officer. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs General Dan Kane also spoke at the news conference and said, quote, "People are more important than hardware." For more, let's bring in CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi. Olivia, we had reported out a lot of details about this high-stakes mission, but what else did the president reveal?
Well, it's good to be with you, Lindsay. Yeah, the president went into extreme detail at points, talking about the efforts across the entire military that it took to get this airman back home. You're right. We did have a lot of those details confirmed this morning from our Jennifer Jacobs, that about 200 munitions were used. At one point, 150 aircraft were sent into the area to help find this airman. His call sign was Dude 44, which happens to be my favorite fact about this. I find that very fascinating. Navy SEALs were used, Air Force Special Operations, Army Special Operations, all of those used to get this airman back. And also interestingly, the CIA director, John Ratcliffe, was there, who went into detail about what it took for the CIA to locate where this individual was. They said he was in a mountain cave, a crevice, and he was there for several hours. And once the CIA knew where he was, they then gave that information to the military. And Hegseth presented President Trump, the Secretary of Defense presented President Trump with potential options of what to do, to how to get this airman back. President Trump actually said at one point that not everyone was on board with this mission, meaning that some military officers preferred not to do it, he says, because of the amount of resources it would take, the amount of personnel that they could lose. You heard him there say it could be in the hundreds. But ultimately, the president decided to go forward with this mission. They said they were following it all weekend. We did also learn from General Kane that that Warthog aircraft, that A-10, which they called a Sandy aircraft, was one of the aircraft that was primarily communicating with the downed pilot that was hit by enemy fire. That plane was also shot down. So we learned more about what was lost in this mission from over the weekend, the special operations mission, but ultimately no lives were lost. There were some injured service members, and of course there was the aircraft that was lost, those 2 C-130s that just couldn't get off the ground. There was just too much sand after they landed in a makeshift airstrip in the middle of Iran. They just couldn't get off the ground, so those planes were destroyed. But ultimately, the president, quite pleased with the way that this operation went, commended not only who participated, but the contingency plans that they had in place, the redundancies that ended up having to be used to get everyone out of Iran safely. And the president saying that they're quite pleased with the way this went, and that airman is recovering safely now.
Olivia, let's talk negotiations and next steps for the war, because the president reiterated what he put on Truth Social, where they have until tomorrow to strike a deal, that would include the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. He's saying, "We think they're negotiating in good faith." The president said that it appears the new regime is less radical than the previous, but he said after that, no bridges, no power plants. And he said that they have knocked out their Navy, Air Force, mine droppers, etc. What do we know about the next few hours, the next few days in this conflict?
Yeah, Lindsay, there is a lot to unpack there. There's this self-imposed deadline that President Trump gave the Iranians, 8 p.m. on Tuesday night, so tomorrow. This is that extension of the original ceasefire that the president said you have until April 1st, then April 6th, and now tomorrow night, Tuesday night, 8 p.m., the president is saying they have until then to make a deal. And if they don't, he plans on attacking the power plants inside Iran and their bridges. We should note that attacking civilian infrastructure intentionally is actually a war crime, but the president says it is necessary for them to do this if Iran does not make a deal. So he is threatening to blow up that infrastructure if that does not happen. The president was also asked, given the fact that he started this conflict and initiated those negotiations and discussions about this conflict back in January when the Iranian people were protesting, why he would do something like attack civilian infrastructure, given the fact that the original purpose of this was to have the Iranian people rise up for regime change and to not punish the Iranians that are inside the country. The president then told a reporter who asked that question, the Iranian people would be willing to suffer. We've had numerous intercepts of the Iranian people saying, please keep bombing. So president seeming to think that there are people inside the country that they are speaking to that are still willing for the U.S. to perpetuate this war in an effort for regime change. So I found that also very notable. But to the point of the Tuesday deadline, the president said if they do not reach that deadline, he plans on blowing up those power plants, those infrastructure. And he said the entire country could be taken out in one night, and added that that night might be tomorrow night.
What do we know about communications? Because the president had mentioned that essentially the U.S. action there has hampered communications and their ability to negotiate.
Yeah, that's one of the key things in all of this is who exactly is the U.S. communicating with inside of Iran. We know that the ceasefire proposal that was given to both sides today was through the Pakistanis, who have really been the third-party negotiator between the U.S. and Iran. So really no direct negotiations happening there. Still, the president insists they are negotiating, says they are negotiating in good faith, but they're not exactly willing to tell us who they're negotiating with. There was speculation at one point that it could have been the leader of the Iranian parliament, someone who's been in government for a long time there, still seen as perhaps a hardliner of the regime, but someone who could have been talking to the White House. But again, President Trump suggested at one point they were talking to him, but he had choice words last week when talking about that downed F-15 fighter jet. So no word yet if he's still talking to the United States. And we know from the U.S. side that at least it is Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who was in that press briefing room with the president, along with Jared Kushner, Vice President Vance, and Secretary Rubio, who are part of the U.S. negotiating team, who are having some outreach and some conversations with the Iranians and the Pakistanis. But you're right, the president has said that they have continued to take out their leaders. They've taken out different elements of their government, different factions, different heads. And so, therefore, those negotiations are hard to tell who exactly the U.S. is speaking with in country.
Olivia Rinaldi, thank you so much.